Welcome to Legal Wellbeing in Action, the podcast series of the New Mexico Wellbeing Committee. There's much more to come as we continue our focus on what a healthy legal community looks like. The campaign itself aims to understand the state of well-being in legal organizations, enlist local leaders to help define what well-being looks like for their populace, identify priorities, measure, evaluate, and improve. So for the month of October, we are joined by our speakers from the LOPD to discuss what is unique in the community of New Mexico's public defenders. From here, I will let our guests take it away, and to our listeners, as always, thank you for tuning into Legal Wellbeing in Action. If you'd like to leave us feedback or to continue the conversation on well-being, please email us at well@sbnm.org. We hope you enjoy.
Thank you, Tanessa, for that introduction, and thank you for having us on Legal Wellbeing in Action. Today's episode is about wellness and public defense. I'm Maggie Shepard, the Communications Director for the New Mexico Law Offices of the Public Defender. We are the state's largest law firm. We've got 13 staffed offices across the state, and that includes 233 staff attorneys and 236 support staff. That includes investigators and social workers. We also contract with about 110 private attorneys. And we are a state agency, but we're not under the executive. We are instead run by a chief public defender who is appointed by the Public Defender Commission. Chief Public Defender Bennett Baur is here with us today, along with Albuquerque District Defender Matt Chavez and frontline attorneys Joy Applewhite from our Hobbs office and Samuel J. from our Albuquerque office. Ben, let's start with you for some brief introductions.
I'm Ben Baur. I graduated from Hastings College of the Law, hold on to your seats, in 1992. Started working in Metro Court and did felony work in Albuquerque for 2.5 years before exploring some other ways to practice law, including as a contract public defender, and have been district defender, deputy chief, and chief public defender since 2009.
My name is Matthew Chavez. I'm the district defender of the Albuquerque office of the Public Defender's Office here in New Mexico. And I graduated from law school in 2012. And I had already done externships with the Public Defender's Office. I knew I wanted to be a public defender. I'm very passionate about it. And I started that fall in 2012. And so this August will mark 10 years with the Office of the Public Defender. I went to the University of New Mexico School of Law, and in the beginning, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but very quickly realized I really loved criminal defense and just naturally gravitated to doing defense work and public defense work. And I am very happy about the decision. I've really enjoyed working for LOPD.
My name is Samuel J. I went to American University, Washington College of Law, graduated in 2018. Been in New Mexico, Albuquerque ever since. Did 3 years in Albuquerque Metro, and now I'm on the felony line in Albuquerque. And yeah, I think that's it.
Joy?
Hello, my name is Joy Applewhite. I graduated from American University, Washington College of Law in 2021. I currently work in the Hobbs office, handling misdemeanor and felony cases.
Great. So public defense is unique in the legal profession. I'm curious from each of you about something that sets your work apart from private sector work, private practice work.
I think one of the really cool things about public defense is that you're not chasing money, you're not chasing clients, you're not advertising, you're not worrying about overhead and insurance and, following up with clients that aren't paying, making payments. You're not dealing with any of that stuff. And so what that leaves is the law. And so you're just practicing criminal defense for people that can't afford an attorney. And so it really, it's one of the few jobs, I guess there's a few of them in the public sector that allow you to really just practice law. And if you have a love for the law, of the philosophy of the law, and of interacting with clients and helping people and serving as a public servant, all of those things, it's great because you don't have to do any of it. You don't have to run a business. You're just allowed to do the pure practice of criminal defense for folks that need it. And so that's one of the things I really like about it. I've always liked about it.
I'll agree with that. Having been in private practice at some point, I mean,
and knowing a lot of people in private practice, there is the practice of law and then there's practice of business, and it can take up half to more than half of not just your time, but your psychic energy, the business side. And I've known plenty of really good attorneys who had problems and had stresses and anxieties because of the business side, because they had to go after the money, because they had to figure out how to pay their employees, how to pay the bills, or how to please the managing partner. And so taking the money aspect out of it, I mean, there's different money aspects because the state doesn't always pay very well, for the work, especially the committed work that's done by public defenders. But it's a different, that's a different stress, and being able to practice on, to focus on your clients, the practice of law is a really big distinction, I think.
So Sam and Joy, you came right out of law school and went right into public defense. Is that right?
Yeah.
Why did you decide to do that and not go into private practice or some sort of other field?
So I decided to go into public defense because I went to law school knowing that's what I wanted to do. So just through various internships over the summer while I was in law school, I felt like that's where I belonged and that's where I was needed, especially working in a rural area in public defense. It's very important to have representation and to serve a community where it's needed, because a lot of people cannot afford an attorney in private practice because it costs so much. And a lot of the individuals that we represent need so much services, and helping people is what I like to do. So that's why I decided to go into public defense.
And for myself, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I never thought I was going to be a litigator or a trial attorney until I met, we had the same professors in law school. So those professors really changed everything for me, and also just challenged me and scared me to death. So that's kind of why I just, like, nothing is more zealous than a convert. So I was converted. But then as far as like the question of like the difference between private practice and this, because Joy and I don't have that experience, I think the most times it comes up with me is when like a client goes like, I'll pay you more, like, I don't know if I can pay you for that, or what am I paying you? And it's just nice to have that one like beautiful moral clarity moment of like, you don't pay me anything, I'm always going to be there. Like, you ain't got a choice. It's you and me to the end, man, or whoever. And I think that's one thing that I always like, that's how I interface with like private practice versus public defense, is like, I could not imagine, and I'm sorry if I'm going to offend like the private bar, but I couldn't imagine being like, yeah, I sent you an investigator to go videotape the crime scene at night to see what it would look like for you. Here's the bill. I couldn't imagine doing that. So it's one beautiful moment in public defense where I just have this like, like, I'm not here for money. I'm not going to push more money on you when you're in the worst place you could possibly be. So that's kind of like, that's my brief interaction with the private bar for that.
That's a really interesting point, Sam. And I think, I think that has a big part to do with if our clients can understand that the relationship that you can build to learn about them. And I think it relaxes them, don't you? That if they can understand, and some of them will never trust us because we're part of the system. But when you can build that by just saying, no, I'm just doing this for you.
No, I think for sure. I mean, again, like, we all have hard clients, but I think for those clients who are already pretty receptive to us, to be able to say in that moment when they're like, when they do worry about money or whatever, just to say in that moment, no, like, there's no money here. Like, you're not paying me. I think you paid maybe $10 ever for us, if that. But that beautiful moment to be like, no, I'm doing all of this. I'm working your case. You don't owe me anything, but I'm always going to be your lawyer. Even if we go to probation, post adjudication, like, no, we're still going to be there. And I like having that moment also, even if we're talking like ramifications of trial, like, we will be your lawyer throughout. I think it builds a lot of trust.
I wonder, listening to how you're talking about that, if that has implications on your wellness, or if the opposite would have implications on your wellness. So for you, this alignment of money and the business part of it would feel uncomfortable for you in private practice and would probably affect your wellness, I imagine. And so not having that, does that make your life better? Is it easier for you? Do you feel more well because you're a public defender than you would if you were a private practitioner?
Well, that's the problem. I don't know, because I've never had a private practice experience. So everything's just kind of hypothetical for me.
I just
I don't know.
imagine like the private attorneys right now, like,
They're hating us so much. We should probably move on.
yeah, I imagine them like in the hot tub at their, fitness club right now, just hanging out. Then they're going to go get some brunch, maybe a mimosa. No, I'm only kidding. I think it just depends on where you practice, because there's plenty of private practitioners that are just grinding out each day, very, very difficult work. So it probably depends on where you are, but I imagine that the stress that you're not dealing with of running a business and chasing money is counterbalanced by the stress of high case loads and difficult circumstances at any public defender's office anywhere in the country, basically. So I think it's probably just a trade-off. That's my guess.
I feel like it would, if you were a private attorney, I think it would just hurt, or just it'd be a lot of stress at all the time of like, I have this client for whatever case, and I need to do extra work on their case because it's a novel idea, or it's a defense you've not done, or it's an investigator request or something. And their circumstance, you've gotten to know them now. And then you have to do X, Y, Z, and you have to charge them more money, but they don't have more money. But to win the case, or they just go to the only defense is this more money route. And I think I couldn't, the stress of that, of knowing I have to put this person who I now work with, and I know, and they're in the worst place of it possible, and maybe they have mandatory jail time if they go to trial on this. It's like I had to charge them more money, and I feel like the moral tension of that would just drive me up the wall and cause me so much stress.
Well, I can jump in there, Sam, having been in private practice and doing criminal stuff. The choice comes down to, let's say the person runs out of money.
Yeah.
Do you drop the case and withdraw on the client, or do you continue to do it for no pay? Which, when you're in private practice, means you are giving up money to support yourself and to support your family. And you're also taking time away from working for other clients that are paying the bills. So there's the same kind of balance that, frankly, you do as triage because of your workload and your caseload. I mean, it's almost unavoidable. I think, as a public defender, trying to decide, geez, I wish I could do this and this and this for these 3 clients. All I have time to do this week is the most important thing for somebody. That's tough sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, those are the choices we make. It's a different choice in private practice to a certain extent, but there are some of the same things. I mean, there's just no way you're going to get the work done, and knowing that somebody's depending on you. And that's one of the hardest things, I think, of the public defender thing. And it's true in private practice, criminal defense, but the criminal defense part, and knowing that somebody is depending on you, whether or not they know it. I mean, it, right? They may not understand how much they depend upon the work you do. But if you don't do X, if you don't file X motion, that could have a huge effect on their case and probation, years and years of life.
So tell me some more of the challenges that come with being a public defender. We have incredibly high caseloads. What else? What else is the stress that comes with being a public defender that you have to manage as part of your wellness? Say it, Jay. I see it on your face. Come on.
These are I'm like, yeah, I'm talking to my bosses. Okay. So I'm newer to the line. And so a lot of this is just, it's really fresh for me, because I made my first few mistakes of I triple booked myself for PTIs, because I was trying to be too open to the state so I could avoid any kind of interference with the court of oh, he's not making himself available. So I made myself too available, triple booked for PTIs, and got a hearing at the same time. So already oh, horrible. I think the biggest thing for me is, if I focus on 3 to 7 cases a day, there's another 10 cases that I should have done something on. And that's terrifying for me because I always think I'm always wondering, what did I mess up? Who's in jail because of me right now? But I mean, even to say like, I worked on 7 cases today, that's a lot, I think, for any attorney. But then it's like, I know there's 10 cases that I haven't looked at or I could have done something on. And it's hard to treat. It's so hard to triage like that, especially when like, you get a call to court and you're like, why haven't you done this? Or you get a motion all of a sudden, you're like, and it's like, well, you haven't done this. And it's a lot of stress of just like, did I triage well, or am I just being inconsiderate or reckless on other cases? It's really hard, especially like, cause like, I think a lot of like, we just had a CLE on imposter syndrome, and like, yeah, like I am always wondering if I'm messing this up or hurting somebody. So yeah, that's like a big stress.
Yeah, that's a huge, I really had to think about that question because the high caseloads, there's so much that flows from that. That's like the original like source of so many things that are difficult in public defense. And I think one thing that Sam touched on is really huge, which is when you have that much to do and you don't have enough time to do it, you have to decide what you're not going to do. And sometimes circumstances decide that for you. But one of the big things that I've always talked about is first and worst casualty of work overload in public defense is you're not learning the law like you ought to be and keeping abreast of legal developments and evolutions. And then motions practice, like to research and draft a motion takes so long and it takes so much energy too. You have to be kind of inspired too. I mean, you can just force yourself to do it, but you won't be as effective if you're not in the right frame of mind and really inspired to do it. And I'm not talking just like easy motions that you can just grab a template from a colleague and just plug in your client's information. The really hard motions take hours, days, multiple days, a week. And, in a situation where when you have work overload, you just don't have the luxury of that time. And so a lot of these cases, like I'd say the vast majority of the cases of clients' cases that we represent on have a motion issue in it, that there's a legal error that was made by the police or just, even at the grand jury level, and there's just a million things that you can pursue for your client. And in a sense, that's our most important job, because we, as public defenders, particularly as public defenders, but also as private criminal defense attorneys, we reform the system. We police conduct. We rein in erroneous judicial decisions. I mean, there's a lot of ripple effects that we have on the whole society. And if you don't have enough time to pursue those issues to affect that kind of reform in the criminal legal system, then it's almost like we're not doing our most important job, which is protecting all of society. And so to me, that's the most disturbing part of any work overload, is you're just looking at all your clients' files and thinking like there's dozens or hundreds of potential motion issues that we could be pursuing, but we just don't have time because we're doing PTIs, or we're answering a phone call, or we're plea negotiating, or we're in trial. There's like a million other things that are, I guess, more urgent on the face of it. And so that's, to me, the most frustrating part of public defense. And probably private criminal defense attorneys experience the same thing. It's not like they have this huge amount of time that they can do anything that they want. But I guess in any law firm, especially criminal defense law firm, the less time you have, or I guess the more clients you have, the less time you have to pursue those things that are arguably the most important things to pursue.
One of the other things, and we touched on it briefly before, is being responsible for our clients and who our clients are. Every one of them has been charged with an offense. Probably every one of them has been in jail because they were charged and then they had to get out. I mean, they're just not showing up on citations anymore. There's a danger of going back to jail or prison, or the worst thing is that they are in jail or prison. And especially in COVID, that we can't go to see them very well. We can't visit them. We can't get a sense of them. I feel very much sort of inadequate in terms of helping them make decisions when I'm not sitting in a room with them. So many of our clients have behavioral health issues, substance abuse issues, or often both. And getting that sense of them and how to help them through what is a government bureaucracy, the court system. I feel like the last 2.5 years or whatever it's been of COVID has kind of made it harder for me to do that human aspect of the job.
Anyone touch on the stress of your exposure to the trauma, not just the trauma that your clients carry into their life circumstances that bring them into your care, but the trauma of the incidents or the crimes, the alleged crimes involved? Can someone talk about the secondary trauma we have on our list here as something to talk about, vicarious trauma?
I think the bigger thing for me when looking at like really complicated cases, or where you're looking at someone who's, either looks like a serious maybe drug dealer or like an actual serious abuser, there's a little piece of me that kind of has to stop and go like, wait, are you working for the state? So like when I look at clients who have like heinous allegations, or like there's no excuse, or like I'm looking at like there's no defense, caught red-handed, you were like Mirandizing and you fully admitted everything. I do a double check every now and then where I'm just like, hey, if you think this person deserves it, or if you're about to sell them short, you're working for the state. You're working for somebody else, and you got to cut it out right now. So I understand secondary trauma is huge, although I'm not a serious violent offense attorney, and I have limited experience to it. But like the thing, at least when you talk to me about it, as far as secondary trauma and stuff, is like my initial reaction is like, if I feel that, I have to kind of double check myself and be like, you will not work for the district attorney's office in this case. You will find the legal argument, you will find the mitigation strategy, you will find the humanity in your client, which I think is inherent. You have to do that in this job. But that's my knee-jerk reaction is, if it's something really that would cause secondary trauma, I always have to take a step like, how am I going to figure this out where I'm not a district attorney right now?
Sam, so you've done some misdemeanors and other, we call them lower level felonies, but we know our clients are not lower level clients. In fact, often it's the people with the misdemeanors that have the most traumatic backstories, that are just doing things that bring them to the attention of the police over and over and over again, even though they're not really hurting anyone. The resistings, the drug stuff, but absorbing their stories and trying to help them, especially the ones that come back again and again. How do you deal with that?
I think for me, the clients that I've really liked, who always mess up no matter what I do, I'll go pretty much as far as walking them to pretrial services, or walking them down to, I'll try and help them as much as I can. But I do have a pretty hard boundary of, I can only give someone so many chances, and I can only help someone so far before they have to do it themselves. So I will go out of my way to like walk someone, help them, give them every phone number, conference call their pretrial service officer with them, or Steelbridge or somewhere else with them. But the people who just cannot get it together, at some point I'm like, I've given you everything I could possibly give you as far as an opportunity. I can't go farther. And I think that's because in Metro, that happens a lot, where people like overextend themselves and take responsibility for someone else's emotions, actions, reactions, everything, where they burn out so fast. So I've seen that happen in Metro a lot, because it's Metro, it's almost all like, just homeless, indigent, poverty crimes. That I have that boundary pretty solid now. Like, I will give you as many chances as I possibly can to help yourself, and I'll help you as far as I can. But at some point, I'm done. I can't possibly keep going.
How do you think it's affected the people that have a harder time drawing that line?
It hurts. I've seen it. It really hurts them. Those people who, take more, or they go across the line that I'd be comfortable with, as far as taking like responsibility for someone, not going to, Albuquerque Opportunity Center, or someone not going to IOP, someone catching a warrant for whatever reason, and they just like, they take it as their personal failure. Like a lawyer saying, like, feeling like it's their personal failure. This person, for whatever reason, didn't check in, or relapsed, or caught another crime, caught another charge, or whatever. It hurts. Luckily, at least when I was in Metro, we were pretty tight knit, and we were in office. So, and everyone was pretty close, so that when someone started exhibiting like a lot of signs, we all kind of saw it, and that at least those friends would bind to them pretty quickly, and there'd be a community pretty fast.
And what was that conversation? I'm curious about the conversations that are happening now about boundaries and wellness, maybe in contrast to how they've happened in the past. Matt, maybe you see that as the district defender over the Albuquerque office.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of support, and I think an office that doesn't have a really close, tight-knit support system is going to fail in this kind of a system. Meaning, there's going to be high turnover, there's going to be burnout. People will have a much higher levels of personal problems, whether it's addiction issues or depression or all kinds of issues can come out of this work. But if we have a really good, solid support system with each other, and we have good services from our employer, then we actually we can avoid a lot of that stuff. And I think we really do a good job of that. We do a good job of that statewide. I mean, a lot of these offices are extremely tight knit, and if somebody's struggling, 15 people are going to notice, and they're going to go talk to that person. It helps us manage the daily vicarious trauma and just the grind of the work. I think being in this work for a long time I think I probably differ with some of my colleagues on this point. Being in this work for a long time can actually make you more resilient. People talk a lot about burnout and the fact that after you reach a certain point, you can become ineffective because you've seen one too many traumas and you've experienced them vicariously one too many times. But I tend to think I've seen a lot more of my colleagues just get tougher over time. In other words, be able to manage the stress better and sustain the trauma better, and they just get more of a resilient way about them. I remember when I was a brand new attorney, I would see clients in circumstances that Sam was talking about, and it used to tear me up. I mean, it used to really make me feel sad and just demoralized, and then over time you just get used to things. It's like other jobs, like in the military or veterinarians. I mean, there's a lot of doctors. Over time, you just get really used to the work, and you're less surprised, you're less traumatized by it, I think, and it makes you more effective. And then you also just realize that's how you can be more effective, is to become more resilient, so that you can help more people. And so everyone's journey is really unique and different, and how people deal with those things. It definitely cannot work without a good support system, though. There's no way that people can be resilient on their own.
What's the trigger, or what's the thing that you had yourself or that you've seen from other people to kind of get over that, to get to the point where you can kind of sustain this kind of difficult practice?
Frankly, some folks just realize in themselves that they can't, and that's completely fine. There's different some folks just can't deal with that kind of public defense oriented trauma and hard work. But the folks that can, what's the point? What's the thing that gets them over the hump? And I think it's just having that support system, and then just getting through, difficult experiences. Having those clients that, like Sam was saying, that just keep picking up new cases and keep, stay addicted to drugs or can't seem to get good treatments for their mental health issues, and just the persistence of that. I think it's something in our biology as human beings that we really, if we can stick to something that's difficult, we can just get better at it and get better at dealing with the negative emotions and the stress and the trauma of it. I'm not sure that there's like a trigger point that's shared by everyone, but it's just different for everyone. And for some folks, they never really get to that point, and they realize they want to do something different. And I think that's completely normal. I don't think there's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with that. I've seen dozens of people make that decision, and they're happier for it. It's just a personal journey that each defender has to go through.
I think that's what this conversation is about. This wellness part is what you're getting at there, Ben. Like, what is the practice that individuals can do? And obviously, because everyone's individualized, there's not a big blanket thing, but tell me some of the individual things you do in your own lives that help you reach that resiliency that you're talking about, Matt.
That's a great question. So to really be able to make this work sustainable, you have to develop your own methods of attaining happiness in your own personal life and in your work life. And that can be a whole host of things for different people. For myself, it's one of the things that's really got me through. I'm closing in on 10 years with LOPD, has been, keeping good friendships. I think that's like the most important thing, because you can go to the gym every day and get up at 5 a.m. and go jogging. But if you don't have good friendships and good connections with people, it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel meaningful. Like, we're social animals. And that's like the real foundation of all of our activity, is being with each other and talking with each other and laughing together and drinking a beer together, or, going to breakfast together, just doing things together. That's been really good. And the times that I haven't enjoyed my work, or the times that I wasn't doing that, there's like a real correlation with that in my life. And so that plus, having the ability to step away from work and truly step away from work, because people go on vacation and they're still checking emails and texts and they're making calls, and someone accidentally calls them and says, "Oh, I didn't realize you're on vacation," and they take the call anyway, and suddenly they're like helping someone with something. Then they never have that real break from work. And I think it's important that when you're not at work, to be not at work at all, and then there's other stuff too. And I guess this is probably a little bit more controversial, but this is just probably somewhat unique to myself and maybe other people. But I have this theory that sometimes if you, for periods of time, work harder, it's like a counterintuitive thing, because when you're feeling a little bit of burnout, the tendency is the temptation is to just step away and like get away from it. That's probably the healthier thing to do. But sometimes it's because of that one nagging thing that you haven't done that's just driving you up the wall, and it's on the back burner of your mind, and it's like kind of haunting your thoughts and your dreams. And then if you just get that thing knocked out of the way, you feel this huge sense of relief. And suddenly you don't feel like you have to go on some 2-week vacation. Like, you actually feel like, God, I actually feel relieved. It's not really work harder. It's not like you need to work harder to be happier, because I think that's an extremely toxic part of our culture. I think it's more like really be accurate about what is going to give you happiness, and sit down and actually think about it for a minute and say, maybe if I just responded to that email that's been haunting me, and I'll actually feel some relief, and suddenly your day brightens up. But it's complicated, every day is different.
Joy, you have something like that that I remember talking to you about before, kind of setting like goals and visions, and you have like a board or something that sounds like it kind of overlaps with what Matt's saying about being really intentional about what's going to bring you satisfaction and peace.
Yeah, I have a wellness board that I did at the beginning of the year just to keep me grounded. So it's just like things to help center me, like doing my meditation, taking a moment to take a breath, doing yoga, because yoga really relaxes me. And for me, I love nature. I like hiking. I like being outdoors. I need the sun to keep me uplifted. So just getting out in nature at least once a month is good for me. Like long periods of like hiking or swimming. That's been my thing recently, just going to the pool. So just something for me, I think is good for everyone, because everyone's thing that's good for them looks different, because some people like running, some people like just reading outdoors. So you just really have to know what's your anchor to keep you grounded, to feel healthy and feel like you have a clear mindset, because the burnout can feel really real, and it's really stressful times now. So it's important to engage with yourself and check in and do body scans if you need to.
Let me jump in just for a second and talk about some of this stuff, your triggers, and some things change through your life too, right? I mean, you got our career, our representing people with criminal charges, dealing with their trauma, dealing with our coworkers, and that has an effect on your life, but your life also has an effect on your on your work and the responsibility that I feel to my clients. I'll tell you all, I've told other people, and I'm on the State Bar Wellness Committee. I think I still am on their email list, even though I haven't done much for a while. I went through a period, and I was actually in private practice where I went through a divorce. I had kids. I was in private practice. I had that kind of stuff going on, and I dropped the ball on a couple of cases. And I called the wellness hotline for the bar and got a hold of somebody, and I said, it's not a substance abuse issue. I don't have a substance abuse problem. I have this particular issue. And they said, kind of, gee, we're not quite sure how to deal with that. You know, we've got people for the alcohol. Let me get back to you. And they never got back to me. And I called them about a year later. I called somebody. I just decided, you know what, I'm in a good spot. I'm going to call them and tell them they really messed that up. And they reacted very well to that. They said, oh my God, I can't believe that. We did. It kind of makes sense. And so we talked about that, and I've gone to a couple of things. My name was on the list for a contact. What I've learned from that is that people do need to reach out. And a lot of the time people don't know how to. I had an attorney here who I got an unofficial call from a Supreme Court justice once who said, we're about to revoke somebody's license because they never responded to a bar complaint. And the justice said, I've read this bar complaint and I think it would take 5 minutes to respond, but they haven't responded. So I was able to contact that attorney, and he had a stack of like 4 letters from the disciplinary board in his drawer, unopened. And it was anxiety that was keeping him from opening it. We were able to work through that in just a couple days. And the load that was lifted from him, and I understood that completely from what I had gone through. I mean, I understood that putting those things in the drawer, and you need a breakthrough sometimes, and you need somebody to help you with that. So I think the point is, wellness is also knowing how to, and having the resources for when that thing happens, which can be created by either your work or the other things in your life. You know, it's the confluence of them. We just need to know how to do that and to recognize it. And I also think that I owe stuff to my clients. The other things in my life shouldn't mean that I do a bad job, right? For one of my people who depends on me. And I felt guilty about that during the time that I was going through those things. Sorry, that was kind of heavy, Maggie.
No, I liked it. I think that's really thoughtful. Maybe that's a good transition, though I would like to hear from you, Sam, before we really transition into that. Sam, what your personal practices are of wellness, but maybe moving into after that, kind of what our department is doing differently, like how we're shifting to deal with wellness and prioritize wellness might be something good that we can talk about.
I agree a lot with both Baur, with Chief Baur and Mr. Chavez said, because I just had this happen where, like Matt, I totally agree, because, I had a hard week last week, and I kept like not sleeping, thinking about something, and then yesterday, I went in and I prepped what I needed to prep, and it was hard because I ignored like 6 calls because I have to listen to this PTI, right? I have to transcribe this video. And I missed 6. I almost didn't take your call this morning because I was like, okay, no, mentally, I've got to get things done. And like, I saw the call and I was like, I have trial in a week. I don't know. And I was like, no. I'll take the call. But anyway, I prepped what I had to prep, and I felt immediately better. And it really relaxed me. And now I'm back to like, I need to go do it again. And then what Chief Baur said, like yesterday, I was leaving work, and I just said to somebody, a coworker, I was like, I had a really bad week. Like last week, I had a bad week. Nothing really bad happened, but I struggled. My significant other called me on it because I don't usually take work home and like stress me out. But my significant other was like, what is wrong with you? Because you're being snippy. You're not yourself. You're being kind of an asshole. Like, it was like literally like, I don't like this. And I had to be like, oh no. So yeah, I think definitely part of wellness is targeting, knowing what you need to do, like maybe get the procrastination thing or the thing that's looming off. I think is a real part of it. And then also just, I think normalizing saying to people like, I had a bad time mentally, and then people reacting to that, I think just frees up the space where that's normal. So yeah, thank you, Mr. Chief Bauer, for saying that, because like again, like I said that to not to that degree, but I said that to people, and it helped. And then as far as my own practices, like I think I take it too far. I know I take it too far, but because I think it's like all the stress books say like you need to do something physical to break a stress cycle because it's a physical reaction. So I do a lot of stuff. I run with coworkers often, like 2-3 times a week. I go rock climbing with coworkers 3 times a week. I do wake up at 5 a.m. and go work out. But I have friends there, and I've brought coworkers to the gym. And so I do a ton of stuff because I think it helps me break the cycle. And I think my father's saying was always invest in your passions because they can never leave you. The subtext was that everyone will leave you, so be prepared. But we'll look over that. But anyway, I try to invest in my passions because I think it invigorates me. And then when I come to my job, I'm going in happy. Like I did something good today. I'm going to do something good at work. And at the end of work, I'll have done something good and I get to go do another good thing. Like, so I think it kind of like, that's how I try to do it, is just like things I look forward to every day. And work's a big part of that, but also investing outside of it's big.
I think everybody sometimes feels overwhelmed. And for me, one of the things I learned was kind of forgiveness and honesty. Like be able to say, I've been messing this thing up to now. I'm finding the strength now, whether it's by myself or with help from somebody, and which sometimes you need, whether it's counseling or a friend, Sam, you talk to, just saying it to somebody you work with. Coworkers are some of the best counselors, I think, for this stuff, because we experience so many of the same things, although we experience it differently as different people. But for me, it's being able to say, okay, I'm going to have to forgive myself for the things I haven't done up to this moment. And now I'm going to try to figure out how I can be good from here. I haven't seen this guy in custody for 2 weeks. I had all this other stuff. I sort of forgot about him. I feel really terrible about that, but I'm going to make the appointment now. And when I get on, I'm going to apologize to him. And then I'm going to go forward. I mean, those are things with clients sometimes that I realize, how can I have forgotten about this person? But I'm going to have to do it. And, I've seen lawyers who then do it by not, by not contacting the person or not writing a motion or not doing things. Whenever the moment is, you can catch yourself and forgive yourself and move on, that's it.
In our couple minutes here that we have left, we have a couple of things on our list that we talked about last time, or if there's anything that you all want to hit on before we wrap up in this last little round of conversation. We have changes in vocabulary among attorneys and staff generationally. We have what our agency is doing, department-wide trainings, etc. Sam, last time we talked about values and how those are really important. We kind of hit on that in the talk with the private attorney stuff, but that was kind of mixed in. I'm wondering if that's something we want to talk about. What do you all think? What sounds good to touch on before we wrap up?
Maybe lessons learned. I mean, I feel like as we go forward in our careers, we're always learning things just by trial and error. That might be kind of interesting to talk about, like lessons learned for how to make this work sustainable, how to avoid burnout, and just make it a happier workplace, a happier career.
I think if we're talking about I think the generational terminology that's different, like the self-care term or I think part of that though, it's hard because I think self-care is also work. It's not just a day spa, it can be, but it also has to be, you have to make an effort. It's self-care. It's not self-luxury. That's the hard part. It's to do self-care. You can't just put a balm on it or just pause for a second, because it'll just be waiting for you outside the spa, right? You have to put in the work, and it's not like I'm good at this. It hurts all the time, but that's the problem, I think, is if you're going to do self-care, awesome. Can't wait for you to do this. But then there needs to be strategies. There needs to be a talk. Usually it shouldn't happen alone, where you should either talk to a professional who can help, although everyone's so adverse to therapy. But I think that's changing too. But or just in a real conversation with people of like, this is my strategy. This is not my Sunday Ferris Bueller's day off. I don't care anymore Sunday. No. It has to be like, you have to address things with yourself. And it's self-care. It's tending to yourself. It's hard. It's not great, but you'll feel better later. So I think that's a hard thing. That's self-care. One is a term that's not understood a lot of times by the older generation, and then also taken advantage of by the younger generation, like my generation, where they just blow everything off and don't care. It's nuanced. It's hard.
Yeah, like self-care has to have the intention behind it. Like you can't just be like, oh, this bubble bath is gonna fix all of my problems in life, because sometimes the bubble bath might not get it. And even with therapy, like it is still has some stigmas in some communities more than others, but it's important to go to therapy because sometimes we just can't do it alone, and it's okay to have a professional who helps you, because we are professionals who help other people. So we're experiencing a lot, and it's not just the vicarious trauma that we might feel from our clients, but also having to deal with other factors that come a part of being a public defender, like maybe that email got read wrong and now you're upset for the rest of the day off one email, when you just needed to be like, you know what, this email, I'm gonna step away from it, and I cannot control how other people, react. I can only control how I respond. So yeah, you definitely have to be intentional with the self-care, because if you aren't, it's not as effective as it should be anymore.
Sam and Joy, as fairly new attorneys, our newer attorneys, what are your expectations from your workplace, from LOPD, as far as your wellness? Like, do you have expectations that wellness is built into your work?
Can't wait to tell my bosses this.
Bring it.
Yeah.
They're resilient. They just told you they're resilient.
I think it's changing. I definitely think when I started, no. But I think I had I think what was big to me was Todd Olmos said to me, like, I'm taking a wellness day. I'm taking like it was like a Thursday. It wasn't even a Friday. It was like a Thursday. I was like, what? He's like, he said something to like, it's been rough. Taking Thursday off. I'm not going to be here. Don't call me. And that set a huge example to me where I was like, oh, okay. Like, that is amazing. So that kind of thing, I think when I see like the leaders normalize, like, I'm super stressed out. I've done all I can, because like everyone does all they can, but I need a moment. And they take a wellness day. I think that helps me a lot, where they're like, I'm going to put my mental health in front of work. I'm going to use the time I'm afforded, and I'm taking this off. That's huge. And that means a lot to me when it's normal. And yeah, because I think everyone, like Sarah Pepin's my supervisor now. She checks in a lot. Chris Knight checks in a lot. I think historically all my supervisors have checked in a lot. But it's still hard to be like, I'm struggling. But it's nice when you see them take mental health days. I think that's a big one. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I think the mental health days are important. Like, I've definitely have had a mental health day, because sometimes you get to the point where your brain is not functioning, and it's not you being in the office is not useful, and you just have to like take that moment to detach yourself and figure out where you need to get back to. And in law school, we were actually having like mental health days because we weren't getting breaks anymore with COVID. So I had already gotten used to mental wellness days, to just take a moment to breathe and relax and do something for myself. When it comes to like expectations of the department, I think everyone should be practicing wellness, and like it shouldn't just be something that we do like once a week, or when it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And July is actually Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. And it's just like, it shouldn't just be when it's the month or the week that we acknowledge our wellness. It should be like a everyday thing, like how can we practice our wellness and what can we do as a whole to make sure that everyone's doing well.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part is like, I know the usual thing is like, diamonds are, made of pressure, but I think creativity and like actual inspiration to write good motions or to litigate well, that needs space. And if you're just taking calls all day for emergencies and, feeling the pressure or just so afraid to fail, creativity never comes to me in those situations. Creativity comes to me like when I'm on a run or I'm actually relaxed and it slaps me in the head of like, oh, that's a great opening. Like, oh, that's how you cross them. That's how you cross them. So that's the hard part. Cause like I can just take calls to alert me to emergencies all day. All day I can just answer my phone and write a motion, answer my phone, call a PTS officer, answer my, it's horrible. Like you can do that. But that's the hard part, I think, is creativity like that, especially in litigation, requires, I think, at least sometimes space. So I think you need mental health breaks.
Yeah. So for me, this is a hard job. It's a great job. I love it. Obviously, I wouldn't be here. I've done it from different sides as a trial attorney in Metro, district defender in Santa Fe, and in administration. I'm always trying to be better. My own personal motto, I think today is, work hard, play hard, friend hard, and make it all work together. I cannot be a real good public defender if, other parts of my life are neglected too much. And it's kind of the whole being kind of thing. I mean, the work is incredibly important to me. When I'm in a good mental space, I like coming to work. When I'm not in a good mental space, I don't always like coming to work, and I'm probably not as good at it. And so I think the self-care thing is important, not just for the person, but for the work and for our clients who we serve. Because if I'm not good, I'm not good for them.
I think a big factor is, it's almost like I'm seeing a pattern here in a lot of what we're saying. It's not isolating, like Sam was saying, reach out to folks. There's no, the stigma is really, hopefully, going away on a lot of this stuff. And I think reaching out to folks and just developing those good friendships, and yeah, it's like striking a balance. And sometimes the balance favors, a little bit more R&R. Sometimes the balance favors a little bit harder work in order to, make it sustainable and make your life a lot easier, but a lot less stressful. But I think this is a good development, because when I first started in this career, these things weren't really talked about that much. People would say things like, go for a 10-minute walk, or, it was just like really at the margins. It was, and now it's kind of at the center of our work, which I think is a huge, huge benefit to ourselves, our clients, our profession, and therefore our communities. And we should continue to do that. I think it's really just kind of the beginning of that now. But I think, and I haven't really been that good at it, because I think I started in a different time, and I've had to learn a lot of hard lessons along the way. But the fact that people talk about self-care, wellness, sustainability so much, I think is awesome. And I think we should really continue to keep that at the center of our work, because it just makes us happier people and makes our work more fruitful and makes us more effective for our clients. There's just no downside to it. It doesn't make anybody lazy. It's not like we're dropping the ball more because we take better care of ourselves and each other. If anything, we're becoming more effective at what we do by keeping that at the center of our profession.
In true attorney style, we could continue talking, but we'll wrap it up there. Thank you for listening to Legal Wellbeing in Action.
Thank you for listening. This episode was produced by the State Bar of New Mexico's Wellbeing Committee and the New Mexico Judges and Lawyers Assistance Program. All editing and sound mixing was done by Blue Sky eLearn. Intro music is by Gil Flores. The views of the presenters are that of their own and are not endorsed by the State Bar of New Mexico. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, or legal advice. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any